As you listen to the lecture, here is a question for you to ponder on. Webhooks can be triggered using GET as well as POST requests. Is this true or false? You'll get the answer in this lecture. We are going to create a brand new intent within our trip planner bot in order to retrieve weather information for the city that we plan to visit. And this time we're going to do this for real because this intent will be actually fulfilled by running code externally. Now, create a new intent and call it check weather. Check weather will check how the weather is in our destination city, which is why it fits in so well with our trip planner. If you're planning a trip, getting information about the weather and knowing what to pack is part of the experience. Configuring this intent is no different from configuring any of the other intents that we worked on so far. In order to get weather details, there are two bits of information that our customer or user needs to provide: the city for which we want the weather and the date for which we want the weather. Both of these are required parameters whose slots have to be filled. Within the user says section, configure the user expressions that will actually invoke this particular intent. The weather forecast in San Francisco tomorrow. Now, this contains both tomorrow, that is the date, and San Francisco, that is the city. Both of these are required pieces of information. So, our parameter table is complete with a single user expression. And because both of these entities are built in system entities, we didn't have to define any entities upfront. So go in and type in a bunch of other user expressions that make sense here. Remember that the more user expressions that you specify, the more intelligent your bot will appear. Once the user expressions have been configured, we can move on to the parameter table. Mark both of the parameters as required. We need to know the city where we want the weather information for. We define prompts to elicit this information in case the user has not given it upfront. These prompts are simple. You can simply say, which city's weather would you like to know? Hit close on this dialog, mark the next parameter as required, and define prompts for it. What day's forecast are you looking for? These prompts will elicit the information that you need, and we've pretty much configured this intent. It only needs for us to specify a text response. Now, this text response will only serve as a fallback because we actually plan to fulfill the user's request using an external API via the webhook that we set up. The actual text response this intent will receive from webhook. Here we can simply say, sorry, I don't know the weather in $GeoCity, indicating that it's a default response, kind of a canned response, which will go back to your customer. Hopefully, they'll never see it because our external webhook will fulfill their request. We click on save, and we are now ready to test this particular intent. We asked for the weather in London today. We've specified value for the GeoCity as well as the date parameters, which means this intent can be fulfilled right away. We haven't set up the external URL to hit yet, which is why the check weather intent, when it's hit, will give you back the default response. Sorry, I don't know the weather in London. Let's now explore the fulfillment link. Use the left navigation pane to go on fulfillment and see what we need to do in order to fulfill this intent using our webhook. Now, if you go to the fulfillment page, you'll see a page which looks somewhat like this. Now, it doesn't look exactly like this. That's because Dialogflow is constantly updating their UI. And now the new UI should look something like this. The main difference here is that we now have an inline editor where we can write code in JavaScript and deploy our server code to cloud functions right from this page. So you don't need to only set up an external webhook URL. You can have this inline editor, create a cloud function, and configure your webhook URL to point to this cloud function. This is new functionality that Google has added within the last month. We'll see how to use this inline editor towards the end of this section. For now, we'll proceed with setting up our webhook URL to be hosted externally. Now, let's look at what webhook is. Webhook is basically a URL that you configure which has some code running behind it. This URL is capable of receiving only post notifications. The post notification will contain a bunch of data in JSON format. Your code can extract the information that it needs from this JSON data, execute the code to actually fulfill the user's request. Dialogflow expects the response from webhook to be in a specific format. The exact format you can explore in the link that you see on screen. You'll also see what that format is like when we actually set up our server. We look at one specific example in this section, but if you're interested in other examples, you can simply click on this link and explore the documentation. And the answer to this question is that webhooks can only be triggered with post requests or post notifications, and they send back a response by parsing the JSON data and executing the code that they need to. They can't be triggered using GET requests.